So what I say, you take it with that disclaimer that I probably don't know much, but it should still serve as I know what I say can serve as ground to discuss, quarrel, contest, whatever we should do there. I'll make a few opening remarks and then we'll take the films that I have seen, maybe one by one. A time-bound narrative, whether it's a play performance or a film. See, the two things that happen with a play performance is that space is shared between the players and the audience. Time is shared between the players and the audience. They have to be in the same time and that same space. In a film, however, the players are not there, but the film actually runs, it's time bound. You can't interrupt the narrative. It's time bound, it runs. And in that space you have to watch it, in that frame you have to watch it. But the players are not there. They're not affected by how you respond, which of course in a play it happens, they get affected by it. And in that kind of a narrative, conflict is very important for all kinds of reasons, but this is not a session on that. But I'll just say conflict is important. And the presence of conflict, I'll say, actually comes with danger. Danger is the most critical quality there. There should be a moment of danger. The moment that happens, then it becomes kind of interesting. So I just watched Kannada film Nitya Karma that was there. This is a story. In 2 lines, there is a young man who watches pornography all the time, and he accesses pornographic films from his friends. And one day he gets a film which he goes home to watch, and it actually his sister features in it. Right? Now, having encountered that moment of danger, I think it's easy to lose your way. I'll just ask a series of questions before we do any criticism of it. Now, the thing is, when he discovers it's his sister, what exactly is the danger there? Really, it may seem obvious, but it must be said, because it's not obvious to the filmmaker always. That's why, What is the danger? She's acted in a film which is pornographic, and that smart film has gone to unknown sources. What is the danger? She's gone and acted in it, hoping people will watch it, right? Why would she do it otherwise? I think in that they're saying she's innocent. Okay, yeah, but the thing is, okay, the danger is she'll be caught. But I'm saying this thing it becomes a little vague because she's being filmed. She knows that. She says, stop it, right? So I'm saying, I think the danger, I'm saying, you contradict me if you don't agree with me, that if she's seen by anonymous people, I don't think she cares, or that's a suggestion it seems. The film's shock value is that the brother finds out it's a sister. The thing is, it should not be discovered by somebody close to you. That seems to be the problem. I don't think it's a problem of guilt as much as a problem of shame, and shame of a very particular kind. It should not be someone of your own, right? And I feel that whether it's a big film or a short film, I think this problem is there that we lose this idea of what exactly is the shock, you think. Many times it's assumed, and a film carries on actually trying to evoke a morality that doesn't exist. There is no moral point in the film actually, except that, and in the boy's agony is without moral actually. What is he agonized about actually? It's never clear in the film for me. I'll take another film made by actually people involved with CFD. Did anyone watch that Playgrounds? Okay. Now the thing is, in that film, again like two-line story, an auto rickshaw driver who needs to attend to some family medical emergency does not notice a kid has fallen asleep in the back seat of his auto rickshaw. It's only when he reaches home he finds out that the kid is there. His effort is to restore the kid from where it came. He does not know whose kid it is, so he takes it back to the environment where the auto was parked before. And sure enough, the parents find the kid. What is the element of danger in this? You don't have to answer because I've not given all the relevant facts. He's a Muslim. Now what's the element of danger now? He took the kid away, somebody will suspect. That is the problem. Because the filmmakers are not innocent of that one, because that line is said by somebody in his neighborhood. They say, oh, kisi ko, somebody's child, uta ke aa gaya. They'll say. And he gets angry. So they're conscious of that. And they escalate the value of that by making him a person from a minority community. Now the thing is, the danger of the film is that somebody else will say that, not somebody in his neighborhood, which is safe for him. But the parents will say that, right? But the parents are actually construction workers like him. And they're poor like him. And they're quite grateful to get the kid back. And they don't make that accusation at all till the very end. And that accusation they make when there is no danger, they're actually leaving him. They're running away from him because he has said because of this kid he had to lose the day's fare in business. And he says, I should be compensated for this, for bringing this kid back all this distance. Give me 600 rupees. And they refuse to pay him that much money, and they're going. While going, she makes the accusation. It's a good business. You take away children and you come and give them back and ask for money. And I feel in that film, the first sense of danger that comes to you when you see a Muslim and that kid is taken away goes away, because it does not matter that he's a Muslim. Actually, that's what it becomes in the film. In which case, why is he a Muslim? If he's incidentally a Muslim, I'm saying there is a problem, because the framed subject, actor, object, background, lighting, dialogue, costume, identity acquire more meaning than a nominal meaning that you get in life. That is the problem. If you see a Muslim auto rickshaw driver in real life and you think, oh, this guy is a Muslim, then something is wrong with you. Okay? Most people just think he's an auto driver, like they don't think he's a Muslim or a Sikh or a Christian. No, you don't care. It's an auto rickshaw driver. It takes you from one place to another. A taxi driver takes you one place to another. But in a film, if you show a person in close-up, he's wearing a Friday cap, he's done namaz and come, you'll think there is a point in the film because of that. There is something in the story that is related to the fact that he's a Muslim, you think, right? That framed narrative is a charged narrative. Everything in the frame acquires meaning that it doesn't acquire otherwise. On stage, if the actor, I always tell this in my acting classes, we say, if you've done college theatre, like somebody is asked to play Hamlet, he'll come to rehearsal every day. Now somebody has to be Hamlet's footman, he has to stand behind, like wearing a uniform. And he refuses to come to rehearsal because he's standing there all the time and he's just like getting bored, okay? He said, I have nothing to do, I'll come only on the last day of the show. And it seems like a reasonable demand, right? Like, I have nothing to do, I just have to stand. He'll come, on stage too he'll get bored, however, because after some time, he's standing and he doesn't know what to do. And he thinks, has my uncle come. And in the audience he begins to... Now everybody gets distracted because in real life it doesn't matter. The brain is a way of filtering this out. But in the framed reality, that thing acquires meaning that is a problem, right? Like that actually, there is this problem of editing in films, which is not cutting out footage that you don't want, but also removing objects in the frame that you don't want, okay? A lot of stuff is there in many of these films. So I think that is a problem. And that is what my center of discussion will be. But we can talk about other things too. So we can begin with any film. You should ask questions, and if I know, I will answer. Even if I don't know, I'll answer maybe. But so yeah.
You said every film has to have danger. Can you amplify it?
See, I'll tell you what I would say in script writing class. I'll tell you a beautiful love story by Indian terms. I'm not talking about like an artistic filmmaker. I'm just saying an Indian love story, movie love story. There's a young boy who sees a young girl and he falls in love with her. She also sees him and she falls in love with him. And he says, I love you. She says, I love you too. And then they get married. Now this is a very good love story for me because boy, girl, and they want each other and they get married. It's a happy ending. This film is not appealing to us, right? You can't make that film because that film lacks something. And I'm saying straight away what it lacks is conflict. Because the boy should say, I love you. The girl should say, I don't. The boy should say, never. If the boy says at that point of time, oh, okay, I'm sorry, and he goes away, you can't do that. He must say, I will make you fall in love with me and I'll pursue you. That's what he should say. That is the conflict thing. Conflict that results in action is what will take it forward. And then you say, look, I am going to get you, he says, nevertheless. And the first step he tries lands him in a trouble that is worse than the one he was before. Then he'll do something else that will get him into even steeper trouble. Then you need closure. Usually I see like a formula. The third time he gets lucky, some revelation happens. And my favorite example for revelation is that, like from the deity, Jyoti will come to the Kutta will run, get letter, take the letter, give it to brother, and brother realizes younger brother loves her. No, it's absurd, but it's there in all the films. No, it's a structure, because you try to do, you get into a worse situation, and some revelation happens, divine, from a friend, somebody.
Can I request you for specific feedback on one of the films that you played?
I don't mind if you ask what film.
100 rupees. Myself.
100 rupees. Oh, what's the story?
Corruption, food corruption.
No. I've seen this a rural film.
Exactly.
See, I'm saying in a film like that, see, to me there is an editing problem. I'll tell you what the editing problem is. Everything in the story should fight for its space and time in the frame. Okay? Otherwise it cannot be there. I'm saying if it is... See, I'll tell you the conflict of it occurs only in one simple thing. This boy has got 100 rupees. To me, that's when it occurred that there's a conflict. He's got 100 rupees which he has stolen from his house. Now whether he should use this 100 rupees to pay a bribe to that village, whatever government guy, and get that insurance certificate, or he should use that money to buy a police uniform. That is what the conflict is actually. But I'm saying, because of all the other footage that the film has got, because other reward things that are there in the film, there is that girl he wants to be friends with. That's another reward. That's true. In many, it's a film meme. The boy not only resolves the problem, the hero resolves the problem, he also gets the girl. You know, that's the story always. But he gets the girl here, but what happens is, the 100 rupees in the film becomes irrelevant, beyond a symbolic thing. The symbolic thing in that becomes a comment that there is Gandhi in it. Because that guy says, you know, there is Gandhi. So if you had to do that story, this boy steals the money and he sees what is, he sees Gandhi there and he puts it back, would have served the same thing, right? Now what happens is, it becomes a drawn out narrative. Also there is that Veeragase message giving. I think I like that. That's a revelation. By the way, that's what I mean. The boy has a purpose. He wants police uniform in that story. Parents are poor. They cannot afford to give him that money. He's a village kid. And he decides to steal the money from home. His mother is weeping. She's sleeping. She notices that he's stealing. She doesn't disturb. She doesn't make a comment. Now the thing is, that one is a value that is not related to the film. That it's interesting is another matter. That's a value that is not related to the thematic idea of the film, okay? And I will say edit that out. I would say don't have it as, you know. Unless she's related to the resolution in some way, the mother. She's not at all related in this, okay? And then he goes and sees a show in the evening, in the night, of a folk tale, where that guy is giving out moral lessons. And that revelation happens and the boy gets an idea. And he dresses himself up as Gandhi. It's quite a nice touch is there, because he goes to a barber shop and the barber asks him, what kind of style do you want? And then he looks at Darshan's picture and your heart sinks a little, because if that is the value, then like what to say, you know. So, but it's actually like a distraction. It's quite cleverly done. When the thing is over, he's actually shaved his head and become like Gandhi, okay? And then he goes to that government official. See, I'll tell you what the problem is. The filmmakers do not redeem that guy, that government official. So the transformation occurs within the boy. He gives up darshan, he gives up police costume, he gives up his hair also, and he wins the case for his father, because that guy sees a crowd and he gets scared and signs the letter. To me, the thing is that thematic center is now confused. He got scared because of the crowd. He got scared because this guy came as Gandhi. It's confusing, I'm saying. See, that is my feedback. I'm saying that is why it seems obvious, if you don't recognize that conflict correctly, that it's thematic and it poses a danger to someone you care about. If you don't care about the person, I think then the danger does not matter. See, if you're driving fast, like Narendra Modi said, unfortunately, and you know, some puppy dog dies, then you may feel bad. But I don't think you're going to stop. I don't know. Would you? I don't know. I think you just go on, carry on, you know. But if it was not puppy dog, if a villager died, then there is danger. Right? If let's say you have a conflict, like a villager died, and there is danger, and you went away, but like that Nitya Karma story, you find out that the person who died is actually somebody related to you. Then I think there's a thematic continuity or integrity to the story, you know. Otherwise, I think there is a problem, because that thematic conflict for the rest of us, even in the big film, actually it's not clear. I feel, I mean, Sriram is sitting here, so I think it becomes suddenly like an epiphany when you're reading. Sometimes it comes to you maybe, but I think there is this always this great danger that you lose your way when you're making the story, because there are so many subplots and other stuff that you want to resolve, that it goes away. You know, I don't know. Is that clear? If you ask any other film, also I'll tell you.
Sir, here. So the conflict theme that we're talking about might not, be very obvious in a lot of short films, and might not actually.
No, it's always obvious.
It is.
It is.
Because I had actually Bharat's film, which was the opening film, probably in mind. Because from a plot point of view, I think the mystery element was, to my mind, kind of redundant to the whole setup, because we already knew that what had happened to the girl, not exact plot points, but we knew what she'd undergone, and there was no resolution in the end, so to say, to the character. There was a resolution to the story, so to say, but there was no resolution to the characters in my mind. So given that Bharat is here, maybe he could also talk a bit about what he had in mind when he was showing that in the way he showed it.
Is Bharat here?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I will see. Look, with the apology that I have acted in the film. Okay. So I will tell you. But Bharat should answer. But I differ with you on the idea that there is no resolution to the character. See, I'll put it in my terms. Okay. The film is not concerned with the mystery of the rape. It declares that it happened, and actually the film does not care about the details of how it happened in a kind of legalistic way or in a prurient way, like it could have been. It is concerned with something else, that there exists a danger to the girl after the event. There is a stigma that comes in a post-rape scenario, and that danger comes from her immediate circle and family. The problem with that is, how does that guy look at her? How does her own family look at her? How does she feel about herself? That is the problem. And when she says you don't understand, actually she's saying that is the understanding that I seek, or the closure that I seek. And the fact the film ends with the guy being done away because he's a distraction in the story. The rapist is not the point to us, because the film needs to get rid of that problem, because it's the post-rape scenario that is the problem. And if the people come to grips with the idea that it is not just finding that guy and punishing, how does society see her? Sushma Swaraj infamously, after the Delhi rape case, said, that girl was still alive. She said, "Zinda lash." I mean, what do you mean by that? Like, it is endorsing the worst kind of moral position, right? And I feel that is what that film deals with. So I think the resolution is to us. I'm saying, it's sure, like hyperventilating and safety and all that, fine. But after that, there are victims. How do you receive them in your society? That's the thing. Sorry, Bharat. Sorry.
No, I think.
No, Bharat, you want to say something?
No, nothing much.
Hey, what is that? Come on.
No, I think
He's asked you something.
Yeah. No, you've answered most of it, so I think you are the better person to answer this.
Sir, sorry, I just wanted to know, there is a barrier in what is said in the synopsis and what we see here. There is a slight disconnect to that particular thing. I feel that it's a problem of every filmmaker to translate what is there in this one too. Because the final film that happens is completely different from what you intended it to be. So, what are your thoughts about this particular barrier?
See, I think synopsis writing is a great craft. And filmmakers may not be equipped to write synopsis. And I'm sorry, we don't have a good critical culture. We don't have good critics who can write, synopsis uniformly well. There may be one or two or half a dozen, I'm saying in the country. It's very difficult to write synopsis. It's like saying, if you watched a film, actually Sriram Raghavan said it really well yesterday, if you ask somebody to tell the story in 4 lines, I think many people, if not most, will fail the test. It's very difficult to tell. Because, see, you should be able to tell the story in these terms. Let's say I'll put 4 lines on it. You must be able to say, there is such a situation. Situations means time, place, setting, culture, language, period, everything. Okay? There is this situation which becomes abnormal. Something happens and the situation becomes abnormal. There is a person or persons who want to restore normalcy. Okay? They become the protagonists or heroes, or they become the people who have action and purpose. Okay? Purpose and action. Now, the disturbance also creates some kind of a villain or adversity which does not allow normalcy to be restored. Okay? Let me finish, okay? And a series of actions are taken and a series of counters happen to that. Eventually, a resolution happens and normalcy is restored to a happy end or an unhappy end. Another normalcy obtains, actually. That's what happens, okay? Happy end or unhappy end, okay? Now you should be able to tell the story in those terms, maybe. And you have to say that in that one paragraph or 200 words. That's very tough, I'm saying.
So it's the problem of synopsis and not like when you set out to do a movie.
It's a problem of grasping it. You're grasping the narrative core and rendering it in text, in words again. It's very tough.
Thank you, sir.
After hearing all this, one gets a feeling that you're measuring it against a particular template.
Yeah.
And you have certain benchmarks and reference points. For example, you said that woman seeing her son stealing, if you were the editor, you would take it out. Now, isn't it a part of perception? Everyone has a standpoint and a position. So the filmmaker has a particular standpoint and a position. Is it that there is a particular paradigm and a template against which you have to weigh everything? Can't it be this mother seeing it as a mundane thing, and that is what normally happens in a house? So,
see, I will tell you, I'll agree with you, okay? That it is there is a template. I'll tell you what that template is. That template is that.
no, should there be a template? That's what I'm coming to that. I'm saying that as a role model to aspire for. I'm just asking, I have no opinion on this. I always thought it was a free thing wherein you could do whatever you wanted. And everything has a message depending upon from which side depending upon your viewpoint, your psyche, your philosophy, your worldview, your attitude. So everyone would have an opinion on that. And so can you hold one particular thing as the template?
See, I won't respond to the message thing, but I will say that yes, there is a template, and there is that one template, and I would advise young filmmakers or young screenwriters to be really careful about violating it. I'll tell you why. It has come from conventions. See, in my opinion, the 3 significant moments of cinema history. First is the cinematograph itself, the Lumiere brothers showing, arrival of a train or whatever in Paris, and everybody running out because they were terrified to see a train coming. The power of film that time was that you could see moving images, not that you could see stories, that you could see moving images itself was a great power of film. That is the first great moment of cinema. The second great, I'm just collapsing into a moment because it happened kind of in that period, is the idea that you could put a shot taken at time x space y. We'll call it time space xy. And alongside put another shot which is actually AB. And it looks like another time space. Now, let me give you an example. I'm running, you have footage of a person running desperately fast. Okay? Then you have footage of a policeman in uniform, okay, standing in a street corner and looking. The immediate connection you'll make is that this guy is running from the cop. That's a kind of inevitable processing of information that your brain does, and it wants to convert it into a story. Okay? And both of them are not true. The first one is also not true. There is no moving images in cinema. They're all still images. But you get the illusion of moving image because the brain cannot process that information that fast. It's because of the inability of the brain to process information that you see the illusion of moving images. In the second one, because the brain cannot handle narrative noise, it cannot get the idea that there are a series of unconnected events, that it struggles to make a story. By the way, I believe that you get tired of some films because you feel it is going all over the place. It is not making continuous sense. It is for that reason that editing has become such a powerful convention of cinema. And what I talk about placing one shot next to another is an editing idea. And that is the next great idea of film. Nothing as big as that has occurred after that. Three relatively, significant things have occurred, but not in that scale. That is, sound was discovered, color was discovered, now 3D is there. But none of these three. Cinema was already a full form before these three things happened. So I'm saying this template is really powerful. And if people are trained to watch it, the way you watch cinema is not the way real life occurs. I'll give you an example. Supposing I need to look from here to you, I actually will pan. The brain filters out what happened in the middle. But if a camera did that, it will acquire significance. The pan is a significant movement in film, not in reality. Now supposing I am talking to you, we can have a wide shot of the classroom, wide shot of the stage, then just you and just me. And that jumping point of view is a convention of cinema editing. It doesn't occur in real life. It's completely unnatural. Magnification is completely unnatural. The conventions of cinema which have come with technology are very particular, and that template has been created over time. If somebody wants to do something creative and bend this and do something else, it may be possible. It never is the big thing. There are many other such conventions, in cinema. That is particular to cinema. Because, if you're making a short film, even there in the short film you're making where you can experiment a lot, you have to show that boy dressed like Gandhi. But supposing you say that boy is Gandhi, it will be a problem in a film. It will not be a problem in a play. That boy can play actually Gandhi in a play, but not in film, because he has to look like Gandhi. He has to be believed as Gandhi. They'll say they didn't cast correctly. He should speak in an accent. Some Gujarati may be there in that cast. Like that, you have to be particular with film. And that comes from convention. So I will say it's not so easy to get away from it. Cinema is a great art. This is the only one that is completely unnatural. It's artificial from beginning to end. But it looks real. You don't have to agree with me. I'm saying that is my justification.
One last question.
There are three people. I'll give really brief answers. You can ask the question.
How important is a social message to a short film?
Because we have seen various films, and some of them really try to bring out the social message, and maybe there is something in the mindset of a movie maker that there has to be a social message or a cause that the short film stands for. So what is your opinion and viewpoint on it?
You know, when I was a journalist, and once I broke a great story, I thought, because somebody had told me, that time Bescom was KEB, they told me some story which was totally against the organization. I was in Indian Express, so I came and told my editor, you know, this story has been given to me. I was very excited because I was getting a byline. Those days it was very difficult. He told me, the story, what you brought is okay, it's a story. The big story is why he gave it to you, he said. I'll tell you what I mean by this. You think you're giving a message. The message you're conscious of is a very small message. The message that you're communicating unconsciously is the big message. You know, patriarchy, male chauvinism, you know, caste prejudice, urban-rural prejudice. All kinds of things are embedded in the storytelling. And that is the bigger message, actually. I'm saying nobody's free of a message. Got all this, and you know, I used to do this as a classroom film for many years. Now I see people don't have the patience to watch that film because they say it's too long. You know, because that film has got everything. Kalidasa's Abhignana Shakuntala is a very good example. Very good story.
This last answer, can I just ask you to elaborate? You said patriarchy or various things will come out. Doesn't it depend on the perception and the worldview of the audience? Different places.
That's right. Actually, that's why that shared attributes that you have with the audience is a very important idea. Who is seeing the film is a very big idea. However, having said that, in a film, somebody is wearing white sari, no bindi, and somebody in, say, Denmark is watching the film and they don't know what the significance of that is. But inside the narrative, okay, if it occurs with significance and you're conscious of it, they'll pick it up. That's the responsibility of a filmmaker, actually.
Sir,
We're done, I think.
so one last question. In continuation to what you just said, yesterday you spoke about, you asked a question to Sriram Raghavan whether cinema can become folk. Doesn't shared attribute itself contribute to cinema becoming folk is what I wanted to know.
See, I think nobody is free from his society. That's related to the message question, you know. You're brought up in a certain milieu with certain social values, and nobody is free of that. To be completely free and that you're making the objective film, I mean, seems crazy. How is it possible if nobody is free of that? To make conscious of what you carry is the effort that every artist will make. Now, willy-nilly, like you can't escape. I think we're done, no?
Yeah, I think we can ask questions outside.
Prakash is always around, so you can always ask him. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll go back to screenings now. We have Project Indian Bride now, right? Yeah, we'll take a small, short 5-minute break to set up, and we'll start the screening. Thank you very much, Prakash. Thank you.